You're listening to Keeping Up with the Knights, a podcast for the faculty and staff at Steele High School, allowing them to connect outside of the classroom. Teacher, coach, mentor, and speaker Michael Herrera, a past District Teacher of the Year, will sit down with fellow teachers and bring their stories to life. Sit back, relax, and enjoy these stories as they unfold on this episode of Keeping Up with the Knights.
Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Brandon Cheves, a world geography teacher of the last 5 years at Steele High School. Mr. Cheves focuses on the progress of his students as his measure of success in the classroom. It was a great time talking with him, and I hope you enjoy it too. Please welcome Brandon Cheves to episode 6 of Keeping Up with the Knights. Well, I'd like to go ahead and start. Mr. Cheves, I appreciate you taking some time to talk with me today. You are on the next episode of Keeping Up with the Knights, and the purpose of the podcast is just for us to get to know each other a little bit better, and as well as the faculty and staff here at Steele High School. I think oftentimes we cross paths with our colleagues, but we don't always get an opportunity to get to know each other outside of the classroom. So my purpose here is to connect outside the classroom. So once again, thank you for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
You bet. So, hey, the first part of this podcast is what I call bell ringers. And a lot of teachers always have some kind of like warm up, right? With their students, whether it's journaling or a question from yesterday's lesson or whatever it is, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just ask you 5 questions, and then you'll do the same for me, and then we'll kind of kick this interview off. So question number 1, what's your go-to hobby?
Fly fishing.
Where at?
Guadalupe River. Yeah. So yeah, I have a tattoo right here. It's about right here is where I go. Like,
and you would be a geography teacher, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Awesome. All right. All right. Question number 2. So you just won the lottery, right? What's the first thing that you spend money on that's not like, trying to save the world or, buy my mom a house or whatever? Like, what are you buying for yourself?
Like purely for enjoyment?
Yes.
Honestly, I would probably buy like the new 4-door Jeep, like just fully kitted out, awesome, just like speaker system, everything, whole 9 yards. Yeah. And to go cruising, or would you take it to go like off-roading, like fishing, camping? Like what's behind that Jeep that you want it so bad? Off-road capability, absolutely. So yeah, I like backpacking and fishing and all that stuff. So it would help me get out to some of those more remote locations and stuff. So
I got you. Sweet, man. All right. So another kind of concept, kind of like number 2. All right. So today's Father's Day, right? And what would you want cooked for you at night for dinner?
Ooh. Father's Day dinner.
Yep.
So my wife makes a really good eggplant parmesan.
All right. So that's your go-to, right? That's what you want.
Oh, yeah. So good.
Number 4, if you were not a teacher, right, what other profession would you want to do?
I'd want to be an outdoor guide. Take people whitewater kayaking, fishing, mountain biking, all that stuff. The good thing about, being a teacher, you've got some time off for spring break and you've got summers and stuff like that. You might as well start your business now. So when you retire, you've got that business ready to go, man. True. That's true. Yeah.
All right. Last question for you. Favorite movie of all time?
Ooh, that's a doozy.
Go with one, man. Just one.
Just one. We're not going genre specific or anything. No,
man. Just your go-to movie.
My go-to movie. Oh gosh. So I have a very nerdy side. So I'm gonna be like, I like Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, Harrison Ford. Yeah, just that movie. It was like eye-opening to me. It was like, oh my gosh.
All right, man. All right, your turn.
Okay, so I know you're a coach.
Yeah.
Right? But so what is your favorite sport to watch on TV?
It's got to be golf.
Golf.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I kind of take that back a little bit, but it's a toss up, man, between football and golf, right? Like there's nothing like waking up on a Saturday morning and turning your TV on because you know there's going to be like Saturday football going on, right?
Yeah.
I'm probably more into college football than I am NFL football. But, man, I'll tell you what, like Saturday morning you wake up, you watch football all freaking day, and then you get to wake up on Sunday and do the same thing. So, you know, it's probably more so excited to watch football. But when it's golf season and the Masters and all that kind of stuff is going on and the FedEx Cup, I'm glued to my TV, man. So, but it's crazy. Like whenever Tiger Woods is not playing, it's like I don't even care to watch golf. You know, I just want to see if he's screwing up or if he's doing something good. So,
is he going to get right? Okay. Question 2. What makes you smile when you get up in the morning?
You know, the first thing that I say in the morning when I wake up every day, every single day, and I don't verbalize this out loud, but I just say it in my head, is I just say, thank you, Father, for this day, for giving me another chance to breathe and live this life. And so that's like, and the outlook that I have on life, man, is that, you know, when you're not guaranteed the next day. And so as simple as just being appreciative of having another day to live, but it also helps out. I'm a sunrise and a sunset kind of guy. And right where my house is located, I don't live on the top of a hill, but it goes downhill from my house and the sunrise comes right over the hills in my neighborhood. So every morning I'm just blessed to see that. And so that just kind of sets my day off. If it's not cloudy, if it's cloudy, I can't see it. But like right now this morning, man, I took a picture of it. It was awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. What's your favorite book? Pretty easy one.
I read a lot of books, man. So I don't know that I have a favorite book, but I'll just go with maybe one of the best ones that I've read. That's kind of my go-to. It's called Raising Your Game by Alan Stein.
Raising Your Game by Alan Stein.
Yep, right. Or Raise Your Game by Alan Stein. And it's a guy who used to be an NBA trainer. He's trained the likes of like Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant and these guys. And he's had podcasts and, you know, I've seen him speak and I've got to take pictures with the guy. And he's kind of turned his methodology of training into how to use that in the real world, like businesses and entrepreneurs. So although it's a basketball book with stories, it's really geared for anything. Like you could read that book in teaching. You can read that book as a business owner. So it's just got so many facets that you can take away to use, you know, in whatever realm that you do. But being a coach, obviously I use it there and I can use it in the classroom. But you can guess by the title, Raise Your Game, right? Like we all need to raise our game in what we do. So yeah, that's my go-to book.
All right. If you could sit down with someone, dead or alive, and just have a conversation with them, who would you choose?
All right. So this question was asked earlier from another teacher that interviewed me. So I'm not going to answer it the same way, just to give the listener a variety here. And I'm going to go completely off the cuff without even thinking about it. But the first person that came to mind when you said that was Nelson Mandela.
Fantastic.
It's probably just an odd answer, but I'm just fascinated with people that stand for something. And his story, being imprisoned, but yet still influencing people outside of prison and the effect that he had on his people outside of, and then when they rejoiced when he was set free and just everything he kind of stood for. Man, I can't imagine being in prison for that many years when most people think of prisoners, right, having a certain state of mind, criminal or just negativity. But he was able to change the world almost.
Yeah.
But being in prison. So I would just, man, I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he did it in that small little cell, but I think that would be an interesting conversation, man.
That would be, yeah, that'd be fantastic. As a geographer, I'm like, oh God. Yeah. All right. Last question. What is your favorite pastime? Like something you do just for yourself? Like
restate that like in a different way. Like, what do you mean?
Like you have a day to yourself to kind of do whatever you want to do. What are you going to go do?
But you said pastime here. So you're talking about like something that I used to do as a kid, or you just saying like, hey, if you can do anything right now, what would you do?
Yeah, you got free time. It's all you. What would you like to be? You just go out and do.
So I'll give you a combination answer here. For me, I am not a lot of people know this about me, but I received a musical instrument about a year and a half ago from an ex-student here at Steele High School who passed away of cancer. Oh, and he drove all the way over here from Arkansas, came into my classroom, sat in front of my kids, and told my class and me that he was dying. And during that process, he also drove all the way over here to give me one of his musical instruments. And I don't know anything about this musical instrument, but he had come years before to play it for me when I used to teach mental health. And when I was teaching that class, we used to do a lot of like meditation and just like soul searching kind of stuff and figuring out who we are and just kind of being in tune with ourselves. And he knew I really liked that instrument. And I guess so whenever he was diagnosed with cancer and then was given a few months to live, he drove here and actually gifted me that exact handpan. So for me, I say it's a combination answer because I would love, if I knew how to play the instrument, I would go into my backyard or on my back patio and just play and learn how to, if I knew how to play that instrument, it would just be like just a quiet, tranquil place for me just to be lost in la la land, if you will. Like, you know, just
you're just creating is what you're doing.
Just creating and being quiet and just kind of, I don't know, being out in God's nature and chilling, you know?
Absolutely.
So that's what I would do. But yeah, that's a really good question, man. All right, so let's start. I'm going to carry out the first question by keeping it really, really simple here. So let's talk about your childhood, like, you know, where you grew up, where you went to school, and we'll keep it to up to your high school years. So just kind of talk a little bit about your childhood and your family life.
So born in San Antonio on the west side of San Antonio, southwest side of San Antonio. You know, grew up not having a whole lot. Parents started off in a trailer home. Dad eventually got a job working for SeaWorld, which he was able to actually start saving up money and able to buy a house. And as I was growing up, he didn't want me to be kind of stuck in San Antonio. So he decided to move the family out to Bernie. And from there, you know, I went through all my grade school years in Bernie. It was fun. You know, I got a lot of free time. I got to go out and play in the hill country. The river was a big thing. So, I mean, I have a tattoo of the Guadalupe River here. And it actually starts here next to where my house is in Bernie, or my dad's house. I have my own house now, but I'm a big boy. So yeah, this is my dad's house, right? And this is the section of the river that I grew up on. And like every family, you know, there's family drama and all this stuff that happens. And so that was my place in Bernie, is I would go out to the river and I would get away from, you know, the chaos and the nonsense that was happening. And yeah, Bernie was a good place to grow up. Granted, it was very secluded, I guess, you know, so I didn't get to really see much diversity when I was growing up, which I think is a detriment to any kid growing up, is not seeing that diversity. So, I don't know. It was good, and I wouldn't really change anything. Everything happens for a reason. So, I mean,
did you go to high school there too?
Yeah, I went to high school at Bernie High School. I was the last graduating class before Champion High School opened up the following year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. And then, so take me through kind of like after that. So like high school, you know, you made that decision, you went off to college. So talk a little bit about like college years, like where you went to school, maybe what you majored in, and kind of maybe some profound epiphanies that you had or whatever, like what you wanted to do after you graduated college? Talk a little bit about your college years.
So, okay. Yeah. So, graduated high school, Bernie High School, middle of the road. I did enough to get by in high school. When I got to college, it was unfortunate. I ended up wasting like 2 years at Texas Tech. I didn't know how to study properly. I the typical high school kid that was just, skating by, not doing anything. And then when I got to college, I realized like, oh man, like I really probably should have learned how to take proper notes and that kind of stuff. And like, oh gosh, like it ended up so that I started off as an architecture student at Texas Tech, got into the architecture program, made it through 2 years of the architecture program, struggled for 2 years, I should say, in the architectural program just because I didn't have the basic skills that I needed. And I realized at one point I was in a art history class at Texas Tech, and I realized that architecture wasn't my forte. That's not it's cool. It's fun. I like to draw and I like to design, that kind of stuff, but that's more something I like to do on my own, like as a pastime, not something I want to do as a career. And so I took an art history class and I realized that the history side of things is what really intrigued me. Like going back and seeing how past decisions of people have influenced our culture today, and learning from the past and all that stuff. And so I decided to switch my major over to history. And also, I moved back to San Antonio during that same time period. And I finished up my degree at UTSA in history. And then my emphasis was in geography. I actually studied historiography. And that's more of like the writing and the cultural aspects of history. And that's where I really found my niche. And I was like, okay, like I kind of want to now share this. Like, I love this. I have this passion for it. And now I want to go and share that. And then that led me into post-college, going and doing the alternative cert program to get my teacher certification and then start teaching.
So when did you get your teaching certification?
I didn't actually get my full-on teaching certificate until after, or like halfway through my first year working here at Steele High School.
Okay.
I was in a probationary period while I was still finishing up my certificate and taking my tests and all that stuff.
And so what year was your first year here at Steele High School?
2015. So
okay.
Me and Ms. Cervantes were hired at the same time, essentially.
Gotcha, man. So you just got finished putting in your fifth year. You're starting your sixth year, right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'll tell you what, in college for me, you talked about how you were, your eyes were set on architecture, right? You like the drawing aspect, you like the building part, the design stuff. And that's actually a lot like me. Growing up as a kid, and I still to this day, I still love to draw and do artwork. But my dad's a civil engineer and my brother's a civil engineer. I did not want to be a civil engineer, but I was like, man, architecture. And I just love this, like this design stuff, right? I knew I could draw. I loved math. I'm very meticulous and type A oriented. So it's kind of like up my alley. Matter of fact, I even designed my home, but once I got into those classes, my brain could not, I'll never forget it. I was in a drafting class, probably my, freshman, sophomore year in high school. Cause that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But man, like one of the first assignments, you had to draw some like 3D model. And in my brain was only working on a 2-dimensional level.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get past that. And so I struggled. And in a way I kind of quit that, but it's okay. Cause I've found my niche of health science and medical. But, and then in college, my eyes were opened up to art history. Man, I loved that class. Not that I would ever be an art historian, but I think culturally it opened my eyes to art from different cultures and how that shapes people, how it shapes a community. And so my appreciation of art, I will go to an art museum to go look at different stuff. When I go to Athens, Greece, I can go appreciate, what I'm looking at instead of just looking at a structure. You can't look at something like the Acropolis, right, or the Parthenon as a structure. It's all the people and the stories and the sacrifices people make. So definitely, man. Well, hey, let's move into. So you kind of talked a little bit about your journey into becoming a teacher. So it sounds like you got your teaching certification, and this is your first place. So like you haven't been to any other schools. This is your first place as being a teacher. Is that right?
So sort of. I've worked in schools before, but never like full-fledged teacher. So I actually worked out in Bernie while I was still in college at UTSA. I worked at a Montessori school. It was called Hill Country Montessori School, tiny little school, very cool. And it drew me in because of the way that Montessori works is a very hands-on learning experience for the kids. And so I did PE, and then I also did aftercare at this school. And it was great. The learning styles and everything. It's Maria Montessori developed this program, right? And little old lady. And it's really cool. Some of the most famous people and wealthiest people in the world right now went through Montessori schools growing up. And it helps to allow students to work at their own pace, which is really cool. So I really enjoyed seeing that side of things. And then when I decided to go into the public education, and I got hired here at Steele, I was really hoping to try and implement some of that more hands-on stuff in my classroom. And so that's kind of my goal, is to get better as a teacher always, because that's always everyone's goal, right? Is to be better than they were the day before. So I'm going to try and get better every day, but I want to try and implement a lot of that hands-on and physical, like dealing with maps and countries and all that stuff is very conceptual a lot of times whenever you're talking about cultures around the world and that kind of stuff. So I want to try and figure out a way to make it a more hands-on experience for these kids. And that's my goal, right? Is to make it a little bit more exciting, because social studies and geography are definitely not usually seen as the woohoo, I'm excited for that class, but I would like it to become that for these kids. And so that's my goal, is I'm hoping to achieve that and get these kids to be excited about coming into my class. So
yeah, it's also what I'm hearing you say too, though, is, not every kid is going to be passionate about, geography. They're not going to be passionate about algebra too, right? But I think there's more to education than the content we teach. And I think it's all about experiences, right? When you give your students the opportunity to work together in a group setting, it's more than just the assignment. Yes, they're going to solve your problem. Yes, they're going to answer your question. Yes, they're going to perform that task or activity, but it's the process of getting to the end result to turn it into you, that journey, if you will, that daily journey or that weekly journey of that project that you've given them to work together, to collaborate. You're giving them the experience. And I think sometimes that's an oversight sometimes in education on the student's part. But in hindsight, you and I can both say that we know more now that we're adults than we did as kids, because they live in the present, and it's hard for us as adults to show them the future in terms of why you're doing this assignment, why you're learning the Pythagorean theorem. It's not always about that. It's about the process. It's about the journey. It's about the experience, so that when you decide that you want to be a world geography teacher, or you want to be an architect, or you want to be this, that we have all collectively as a staff, right, of teachers teaching what we are each individually passionate about to help shape that student. But I also heard you say something I want to touch on a little bit. You said that every teacher believes that they should improve.
Well, I mean, my philosophy.
No, I know, and that's where I'm going with this, because I completely agree with you, is that we should always strive to be better versions of ourselves, right? And I think that it's so important for us as teachers. for those of the teachers that are listening to this podcast, that we have to improve, we have to get better, and we have to learn from our younger teachers, and we have to learn from our veteran teachers. But we can't be so set in our own ways that our eyes cannot be open to what other people are doing. So maybe just answer this. Let me ask you a question, just kind of off the cuff here. That's not on my list of questions here. What do you personally do to improve as a teacher?
Being from a history background, research, I try and look into different things that are happening in classrooms around the country. What's working, what's not working, especially right now with this online classroom and things being as crazy as they are. It's easy to get down and negative about the situation we're in, but man, it is such a great learning experience that is only going to better us for the future. Who knows? This could last a long time. This could, be knocked out in a few months. Who knows? We don't know. There's no point in us fretting over it. It's a learning experience. Let's move on and go with it and really see what other teachers, that's the best experience, is to look at what other teachers are doing. And does it work? Does it not work? Try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, mark it off the list and move on to the next thing that you saw or the next thing that you read about. And you can't get better without failing. And as a teacher, you fail daily. Absolutely. There are days when I'm teaching that I know that I'm like, oh man, that lesson did not work. And so what do? You just keep moving on? No, you try it again the next day and you switch it up a little bit and read what worked for someone else and try that. And if it works, great. That's awesome. That's the whole point. As teachers, we are here to teach kids, but we are also here to learn. And every day is a learning process. Every day is a learning experience. So.
Hey, well said. Well said. I think you hit the nail on the head there. That the only way that you can succeed is by failing. And I think sometimes, and we're all guilty of this, we get very prideful of our lesson, right? We work so hard on this lesson. We work so hard on this activity, and by God, it's going to work, right? And the kids are going to work, and it's going to be miraculous, and all the kids are going to do wonderful. And then you get thrown a curveball when, a kid raises their hand or they come up and ask you about question number 5, and it makes absolutely no sense. And you're like, no, but you should know this already, right? And we get so defensive because we built that lesson, and it's okay to be human and be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's okay to let your students know that, you know what, just forget about that question. That's my fault. Right. So it's okay to be transparent in front of the kids and let them know. But like you said too, though, learning doesn't stop for us. You asked me a question about what my favorite book is, right? I'm literally probably reading 3 books at once. And I just love to read. And so that's kind of what I do to do self-improvement. Think about this podcast. Is this really what, am I trying to make money out of this? Am I trying to be some radio talk show host? No. What am I trying to do as a teacher? Have conversations with other people, other like-minded people that are here for kids, hear what their story is and how that can help me. So selfishly, it's a way for me to do self-improvement, be a better version of myself. One of the things that I learned in many of my books, it talks about, growth. Growth can only happen when you get outside of your comfort zone. Because if you stay inside your comfort zone, if you stay in your circle or in your little square, you're never going to get out, and you're going to be the same version of yourself. So in order to grow as a person, you have to grow your box. You have to grow your circle of influence. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here, is some personal growth and trying to, gain some knowledge from you guys. So I appreciate that. But so here's kind of a more deep kind of question here. There's no right or wrong answer. But I think it's so important that teachers know their why. And so I'm curious to know, why do you teach?
Specifically, if I could choose any of the different subjects to teach, I would absolutely choose geography. And the why I choose geography is because it is open, right? It is up for interpretation, and it allows these kids to truly explore. not just the material, but also themselves, their understanding of the way things work, their understanding. It helps them to better come up with their own identity through learning about other cultures and other places around the world and how things are done. And it helps them to realize like more big picture questions. And that's the best thing in the world. Whenever you're teaching a kid and like halfway through the lesson, you just see them go, oh, like, and you're like, I gotcha. Yes, it's sunk in. All right, cool. And then so you start to get those deeper questions, right? Where these kids are really truly not just thinking about, okay, yes, I am teaching a very specific material, but it applies to the world. It applies to your current life. So how can you take an idea or a concept that we're talking about and extrapolate it and turn it into, okay, this is how it applies to me. This is how it applies to my family. And it just opens up their view of the world and themselves. And
so what I'm hearing is that you're using geography as the vehicle to get kids to have some introspective self-reflection, if you will, mm-hmm. through the cultural lens, right? Like you're trying to allow students the opportunity to learn something about themselves through geography.
Through geography and through other cultures and other people. And because all too often, I mean, and it's not a bad thing, but parents all too often really, really, really crack down and force things upon their students and don't allow them to grow as a person individually. And so that is one of the things that school should do for these kids, is allow them to grow and develop as an individual for the future. Because we're not just developing like, oh yes, here's, there's the United States. Can you find it on a map? Cool. All right. Yeah. But we're teaching these kids, and it doesn't matter what subject it is, we're teaching these kids to be better human beings in the future. And that's like earlier you said, allow these kids to see that you make mistakes. Absolutely. Every day. Don't try and hide that and be like, no, I'm a perfect teacher. No. We are flawed. We all are flawed. And it's important to see, for the students to see that we are flawed, because we're just humans too. So it helps them whenever they're going through this process, because this is a very important time developmentally for these kids to see that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be wrong, and it helps them to just be better, productive human beings in the future.
Yeah, we certainly have to model that behavior for them, because if we, again, try to, put our lesson in front of the life lesson, mm-hmm. There you go. So if we try to put our lesson in front of the life lesson, then somewhere we're missing the mark as teachers. But you're that second teacher that have actually mentioned the light bulb aha moment, right? It's so rewarding and so fulfilling as a teacher that aha moment can happen for a kid who makes a 50 in your class, but now made a 65 because they had that aha moment. It's not about chasing 99s and 100s, right? So, what I'm hearing you say is that it's about the personal growth of a student. You are a teacher because you want to empower and you want to edify students when they have those aha moments and the light bulb goes off and you've done something or said something or modeled something that allowed that student to become a better version of themselves. And it wasn't a test score.
Nope.
It wasn't an ace on the test with the gold sticker that they put on the refrigerator, right? It was simply just getting a kid to have an aha moment, right? Those are those reasons that we teach. So that's really good. So let me ask you a question. What is your definition of success in the classroom?
Essentially what you were just talking about, right? Success is progress. It's never perfection. If a kid's getting A's on everything, that just means that that kid happens to be really good at that, whatever they're doing, right? That assignment, that test, whatever. The progress means that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and that these kids are getting what they're supposed to be doing. If I see a kid, like you said, go from a 50 to a 65, I'm celebrating that.
Amen.
Yeah, that is what we are here to do. It's not to make them ace every single thing in my class. I don't care. Like, okay, cool. Woohoo, we got hundreds on everything. Excellent. All right. The important thing is that you're progressing, and it doesn't necessarily need to be just classwork. If a kid comes up to me and is normally super quiet and reserved and like sitting in the back of the class, and I can get him by the end of the year to stand up and discuss with other students an issue that they find moving, right? Or that they have an opinion about, and get them to stand up and express that opinion in my class, I've done something good. That kid now has a voice in my class, and he'll continue to have a voice because he's growing or she's growing as a person. And helping them find that voice is really, the progress that I want to see. The grades are, I'm a teacher, I have to do grades. Yes, okay. But if I can get them that little bit of progress, whether it's personal or in the classroom, progress is what I'm looking for. That's my version of success.
Yeah, no, that's a very good answer. I like the idea what you said there about progress. And I don't want to like digress into some long tangent here, but in education as teachers, I don't know. Well, I do know we are not asked about student growth in that realm. We are critiqued from the lens of academic numerical success by EOCs and different types of tests that, STAR tests or TOS tests or whatever new test that we're going to be thrown at us.
Quantitative data.
Every 5 years or 10 years, right? Data. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing this podcast now, and most teachers will respond with something to the extent that you just talked about, right? The aha moments, progress like you talked about. Relationships with kids. Like I look at success in the classroom with how I develop relationships with the kids and their trust in me. But where is that graded? Where is that looked upon as being an effective teacher? You and I both know that that's effective. Mm-hmm. But in the lens of maybe the state's eyes or the government's eyes or whoever's eyes, there's no true way of grading that, in my opinion. And if it's out there, I'm just not aware of it, and I'm okay. Maybe there is, and again, I just don't know. But I think teachers like you, teachers like me, and the teachers I've had conversations with, I think it's so important to reward that growth of a student, like you just talked about. How did that student go from being the kid in the corner, being quiet, to standing up in front of the class to express some kind of idea, right? How did that happen? Is it because a light bulb went off in them and like, oh, I just feel like talking today? No, it was the consistency of the teacher acknowledging the student, giving the student the abilities to speak in a safe environment through your connections and your interactions with your kids over the course of the year, so that when they leave your classroom in May, they're safe enough to stand up and talk in your class, so that when I get them as a junior or senior, or Miss Matthews gets them in her class as seniors, she is going to see the effects of what you did for that kid. And then she's going to take the baton from there, right? Now she has a kid who has no problem talking in front of the class, but now she's going to continue to build that student to empower that kid to do something else that they couldn't do at the beginning of the year. And so that's, again, why I really want to do this podcast is we're all in this together. We are a staff at Steele High School. It's not about health science. It's not about geography. It's about building this kid up over the course of 4 years so that when they leave this place, they're a better version of themselves. So I really like how you defined your success in the classroom as being progress. Let's change gears a little bit. Who is a teacher that you will always remember throughout your educational career, and what made them so special?
Oof. So one of my favorite, all-time favorite teachers was actually an English teacher when I was in middle school, Miss Zimsky, and she was kind. She was strict, but she gave me routine, and she she did give us a safe place whenever we were writing our papers or doing anything like that. Like there was no, dumb idea or anything like that when we were writing our papers. She would correct you in a way that was constructive without being, damaging to, a middle school child. So she was really good at guiding middle school kids through the process of writing, expressing emotion on the page, all that stuff. Like she was open, but she was also strict. Like she still required you to maintain a certain standard in her class. And I think that's also important, is to keep that routine. A routine is nice. And that helped me a lot personally, because I'm not type A at all. As far away from type A as you can get. But that routine helped me personally as someone who struggled with attention, ADD, not being able to pay attention very easily. She was really good at giving me the steps I needed and breaking it down so that I could focus and get my work done. And she was still constructive and she was kind. She may have been strict, but she was kind. She was always at least kind.
Very, very, and you started by saying that she was kind, right? I mean, it's crazy how simple you can make a student's life by simply being kind. Mm-hmm. Again, how can you be kind to a student? Number one, care about the kid.
Yeah.
How, and that's what my challenge to teachers listening is, what do you do to let your students know that you truly care about them? And I always like to tell this story, and I don't know if I've done this yet on the podcast, but it's okay. I had a student in my classroom, and it must have been like the second week of school, or maybe even the beginning of the third week of school. And she looks at me and she goes, "Coach, when are we going to start learning in your class?" And I've never been asked that question before. And she's a very smart kid. Very smart kid. Matter of fact, I even think she got 100 in my class, right? She just wanted to learn. I just wanted to connect. And so in my first days and my first weeks of school, we're learning how to learn. We're learning how to be a student. We're learning who the person sitting in front of you is. We're learning who the person across the room is. We're learning who our family is going to be. We're learning who our teacher is. Where does he come from? What's he all about? Is he going to have structure? Is he going to have discipline? Is he also going to have fun? Right? All those things, in my opinion, set the foundation like a home. And I didn't just answer her. I didn't address her. I addressed the entire class because I thought it was a profound, honest, vulnerable question to ask a teacher in front of the class. So I'm not going to address it to her. I addressed it to the entire class. And on my whiteboard stood my why. On the first day of school, I put on Expo marker, and I'm looking at the board right now. I put my why on the board, not my agenda, not my objectives, not student will learn to blah, 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 blah. And I'm not trying to say if you do that, that doesn't make you wrong, but I'm just letting you know who I am as a teacher. I'm about connections before content. And until I build that connection with you, you're not going to trust what I have to say. So I established that groundwork and that foundation with the kids. And that's precisely why I haven't taught them yet. And she thought she was not learning. And no, child, you've been learning for 2 weeks. You just haven't been learning about medical stuff yet. So anyway, I really like how you said that, she was kind. And that kind of just simplifies the amount of impact that we can have on a kid's life by simply just doing that. And I think in order to be kind, you have to build those connections with kids. So you've been a teacher for 5 years, now on your 6th year, which I know is a short time, but you're not a first-year teacher. Without using names, of course, to save the privacy of the child, and since you've only been here at Steele High School, that certainly narrows it down to 5 years of your educational career. But I want you to kind of share a story, if you will, a pivotal moment so far in your educational career that you'll never forget. And I prefaced it by saying student. It doesn't have to be a student story. You know, a lot of teachers have impactful stories of a student who really maybe had a positive impact on them. Maybe it's just a story of how you helped a kid. It just outside of school, right? Or things that they may have needed because you noticed they were struggling. But you can also take it the educational route of other teachers. So I'll let you take it from here, but maybe share a story or a pivotal moment that you've had in your educational career so far.
Yeah. So, I mean, based off my earlier answer, progress is what I want, right? And that's what I really look for. And that's what usually sticks out to me more than anything else, is a student who just made leaps and bounds from the year they were in my class to their, senior year, and they graduate. And so I had a very, challenging student. They were in my first period class. And beginning of the year, I saw this kid maybe 2 times in my class in the first 9 weeks. That's it. But I started reaching out to the kid, and I started saying, hey, come into class. Just come into class in the morning. If you need to get your tacos on the way into school, or your coffee or your donuts or whatever, and then come in my class, you can sit over here in the corner, eat your coffee, eat your donuts or whatever. I just want you to be in my class and at least hearing what I'm saying, And it took a while for him to come back. And eventually, this kid was in my class every morning. Every single morning, he would show up. He might show up a few minutes late, but he was there. And it was by the end of the year, he was turning in every assignment for me. He was sitting in class. He was participating, right? Whenever we'd have discussions, he finally, he found his voice and he was like, okay, yeah, I'm here. Let's have this discussion. I like this. This is cool. Okay, fun. And by the end of the year, he had turned it around completely. He went from not showing up at all to being there every single day. Unfortunately, the following year, he moved out of our district. He ended up at a different district. But when he graduated, he did send me a graduation card. So that's something that I'm like, okay, he remembers me. I know I did something right because he sent me this card, this invitation, like, hey, come check out my graduation. Like it was fantastic. It was a great feeling to know that I had done something right, and he graduated. So, I mean,
stories like that are always amazing. And I think it's such a simple piece that you said there. And I get this from Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight did a whole session over at TABC one year. His title for his talk was the word recognize. That's it. Just recognize. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it doesn't tell me like what you're going to talk about, but his entire speech was talking about the word recognize. You recognize, number one, that this kid wasn't showing up. I think teachers have the opportunity in those situations to just turn the other way and allow that kid to continue to not show up. And see, I think teachers have that impact on kids like you have because you were kind, much like Miss Zinsky, is that what you said her name was? Right? Like you were kind enough to recognize said students not in your classroom. Some teachers will probably say, well, that's one less kid I have to worry about. That's one. Okay, it's just going to be a 0. Okay, I'm just going to mark absent. How many days of marking a kid absent does it take you to realize, hey, let me try to get in touch with this kid? There's something going on. It's bigger than school. We need to connect to this kid to let him know, I've got your back, man. Like, I'm going to be here for you. It's not about acing this class. It's about being in my class, right? Allowing you, the teacher, the opportunity to make that kid a better person. But, and then globally, what you did for that kid that day, and I don't know, and you don't have to share here, but I'll just be the color commentator here. That kid now showing up to your class may have started showing up to all the other classes. And the other classes, the other 7 or 6 classes that this kid had may have been directly or indirectly because of what you did for that kid. And those teachers that are maybe still here, they may not even know that. But it was a simple act of recognizing a kid not being in your class, and you did what you could to bring him back. And then he graduated. He left here with what you gave him in terms of progress. A student who leaves our nest and goes to another high school, and he's carrying on the progress that you gave him here at Steele High School. That's what we're after. That's what we're searching for as educators. Selfishly, I want my kids to be the best medical students they can possibly be, right?
Yeah.
But it's more than that. I need to make sure I do my part to make a student better in my classroom so that when they show up to your class third period, they're also that same effective student. I hear so many stories of how, well, this kid, oh my gosh, I can't stand him in my class. And oh, good luck with her next year. Like, she's going to be X, Y, and Z, right? I'm the kind of teacher that welcomes that kid. Like, bring him on. Bring her on. You right? Or you know, you get the email from a teacher who says, man, is this kid always like this in your class? No. No. Are they always tardy to your class? No. How many referrals have you written for that student? Never have. So why is it that some students perform and act a certain way for certain teachers differently from other teachers, right? You got to show that kindness. You've got to make those connections to those kids. But yeah, that's a great story of how you have impacted that kid. All right, so let me ask you, this is the last question here is, you've been here for 5 years, and if you could thank any teacher here on the Steele High School campus, who would that teacher be and why? And while you're thinking about that, I'll kind of dialogue a little bit about this. Okay. As teachers, we get lifted up as teachers. We get edified as teachers, just like you did when you received that recognition from the student graduation. Hey, Mr. Cheves, I've made it. I'm graduating high school. That made you feel wonderful, right? When we send little postcards home to kids, you know, that Miss Cervantes gives us, how much of effect does that have on that family and that kid, right? But I think sometimes teachers leave out teachers. And so I just want to give you the opportunity to share, if you'd like to thank any teacher here on campus, who would that teacher be and why?
Gosh. It's a talk like that. There's so many teachers on this campus because our campus is definitely one of those open campuses that if you have a question, you could go to anyone and ask. But when I first started, I don't know if I can narrow it down to just one.
You got to, man, because that teacher is hopefully going to be getting this message, man. So who do you want to speak to today?
I mean, honestly, Coach Gerhardt. Of all the other people that I had contact with and stuff, my very first year, right? Never taught in a high school situation or anything before. Had geography, right? I knew the subject, know the material, but the actual, like, how to get this across to the kids, I didn't understand that very well. So I would go in after school or before school, and I'd talk to Gerhardt, and he would break it down for me, like, hey, you know, this is how I do it. This is how I do it. And he was also very clear about, you know, hey, this is how I do it. You're probably going to do it your own way. And you got to find your own way to do it. But here's an example. And so he was very good at giving examples. And then I don't know if you've ever been in Gerhardt's class. He does an awesome job of getting to know the kids, right? And he shows a little bit more respect than a lot of teachers do. He calls them Mr. and Mrs. and by their last names, or Mr. and Miss, right? And calls them by their last names. And that's just a little bit of that sign of respect. Some of those kids go, okay, all right. You know, ooh, he just called me Miss So-and-so. Okay, excellent, right? Or Mr. So-and-so, and like, okay. And sometimes it's just those little things like that I learned from him. it doesn't have to be some grand gesture, something as simple as that, like just speaking to them and addressing them in a respectful, kind, right? Again, way.
Awesome. Well, Coach Gerhardt, if you're listening to this, man, which I hope you are, man, there you go. Mr. Cheves appreciates you as a teacher, and he thanks you for all that you've done for him. And that's what it's all about here at Steele High School. I've said this before on an episode that, Steele High School is a special place. And I've been here for 15 years, right? So I've been here since the school opened up the second year. And, I'm very biased in my opinion, but this is probably one of the best, not one of the best. It is the best high school in the state of Texas. And we've been through 3 principals now, right? And we're on our 3rd with Mr. Cervantes. But I tell you what, man, the relationships and the connections that teachers have on campus, we are an open campus. We are always willing to help each other. If you need help, reach out to your neighbor. More than likely, chances are they are going to help you and be happy to do it. I've really never met a teacher here on campus that hoards their content, that hoards their activities or assignments. And I don't care if you're an English teacher looking for ideas, they're going to help you in math. They're going to help you in science. There's such great teachers here on campus that are willing to help each other. And that's what makes this place a great place to be. And I talk to teachers from other schools and other school districts, and they cannot say the same. They cannot say the same about their school. And I always felt like, am I just on another planet? And people always just hype up Steele High School to be a great place. But I really feel like this is a great place, and it's because of teachers like you that are trying to impact kids and people like Coach Gerhardt that's willing to help you. So, hey, man, I know that there's a lot going on right now. We're trying to do all this remote learning. We've got Zooms going on left and right. So I just want to, say thank you for giving me an hour of your time to kind of talk a little bit. So thank you, Mr. Cheves, for being on this episode of Keeping Up with the Knights.
Thank you for having me.
All right, man. Take care. Have a good day.
Adios.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Keeping Up with the Knights. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure you subscribe and click the notification button so you know when the next episode is released, and then share it with your friends and colleagues. If you're so inclined to do so, would you please rate and review this podcast to help me grow our community of listeners? I hope there was something that you heard today that allowed you to connect outside the classroom. Now, more than ever, we need each other as a support system, and we need to continue to make this the best high school in the state of Texas. Thank you, Knight Nation. Now, go be someone's champion today.